home from the asylum every night, and he had a girlfriend named Rusty, Dusty and Rusty. They both dressed in white, and she was this much taller than he.
You thought Robert Duvall was Hollywood's quiet patriarch, the man who never complained, never feuded, never burned a bridge. The steady hand in every storm. You were wrong. At 94, he finally broke his silence and named 6 people he called enemies. Not rivals, not disappointments. Enemies, and every single one of them is a name you know by heart. They called him difficult. They called him cold, a relic from another era who couldn't adapt. But when you hear what these men actually did to him, you wann't just understand his silence. You wish he'd spoken sooner, stay until the end. Because when you hear who is on that list, you want to believe it. Number 1, Al Pacino. When Brotherhood turned to war. On paper, it made perfect sense. 2 young actors sharing a cramped apartment in Beverly Glen in the early 1970s. Splitting rent, splitting canned soup, splitting the dream. Robert Duvall and Al Pacino called each other brothers, and they meant it. Then came The Godfather Part. When Paramount circulated the contracts, the message arrived with brutal clarity. Pacino $5 million plus 5% of profits. Duvall $1 million, flat. No negotiation, no explanation. One man mattered more, and the studio had just put it in writing. Duvall sat with those papers in a hotel conference room on Wilshire Boulevard. The contracts fanned across the table like an accusation. Production assistant later told friends the room felt like a Dr. S office delivering a terminal diagnosis. Duvall folded the papers slowly, rose from his chair without a word, and walked out. Hours later, single fax reached Francis Ford Coppola's desk. "I won T return just to be someone's backdrop." That sentence ended 20 years of Brotherhood. Pacino never cut his salary. Duvall never reconsidered. Studio tried to mediate. Both men refused to move. "You can preach family on screen and forget it off screen," Duvall told a reporter years later, the only public sentence he ever offered on the subject. The film premiered without him. The Chicago Tribune noticed immediately. When Duvall left, The Godfather lost its moral compass. At the 2011 Oscars reunion, both men stood only a few feet apart, eyes forward, faces blank, locked on anything but each other. Some silences never end, they just become permanent. Number 2, Francis Ford Coppola, the teacher who became a stranger. Robert Duvall didn't just lose a director. He lost the man who once looked at him across a casting room and said, "He's the Tom Hagen I've been looking for." That single sentence changed the entire arc of his life, which is precisely why the betrayal cut so deep. Philip Line's set of Apocalypse Now in 1977, the cracks appeared in the open air and the blinding heat. During the napalm sequence, Duvall collapsed from dehydration, lips split, vision blurring. Coppola watched him go down and said flatly, "Do it again. The light isn't right." A camera operator who was present later recalled the moment like a photograph. Duvall, back on his feet in under a minute, not arguing, not performing, simply obeying, then vomiting quietly off to the side before returning to his mark. The film would win the Palme d'Or. Duvall's respect for his mentor would not survive the shoot. He began to see Coppola the way he saw all men who confused power with genius. Brilliant, yes, but careless with the people beneath the brilliance. When Godfather I arrived, and the contract humiliated him a second time, Duvall went public. "I want to act in a film about family if that family does to respect each other." Coppola sent handwritten letters. Duvall never opened them. What began as admiration and gratitude ended as the quietest, most devastating form of contempt. The kind that does require an argument, because the verdict is already final. 3. Marlon Brando. The idol who became the enemy. Robert Duvall had studied Marlon Brando like scripture. On the waterfront, a streetcar named Desire. He knew every pause, every breath. When they were finally cast together in The Godfather in 1971, Duvall believed he was meeting a god. Brando arrived 2 hours late, sunglasses on. Cigarette trailing smoke, 3 personal assistants orbiting him like satellites. No apology, no acknowledgement. He moved through the set as though the production existed to accommodate his mood. He refused all rehearsals. He demanded cue cards taped to walls and to other actors' backs. He rewrote dialogue on the morning of shooting, derailing rhythms that took weeks to build. A script supervisor who worked that production for 3 months later told colleagues she had never witnessed anything like it. Chaos dressed up as instinct. Duvall, who prepared obsessively and expected the same from everyone, watched in growing disbelief. He was the soul of the film, Duvall said years later, and the enemy of every actor inside it. Then came the 1973 Oscars. Brando sent a Native American activist to reject his Best Actor award live on national television. Half of America was moved. Duvall was furious. He turned our work into a protest, Duvall told a friend. He believed Brando cared more about the spectacle of the gesture than the craft it was supposed to honor. When Brando died in 2004, Duvall sent a single white card to Coppola, 3 words. Let it end, for a man who had once memorized every frame of Brando's early work. That was the only eulogy he could offer. Number 4, Stanley Kubrick. The genius he called an enemy of actors. T, a 2010 Hollywood Reporter roundtable, surrounded by Jeff Bridges, Ryan Gosling, and a room full of industry professionals. Duvall said something that froze everyone in their chairs. To me, the great Stanley Kubrick was an actor's enemy. I can point to movies he has done. The worst performances I've ever seen. Gosling raised his eyebrows, laughed quietly, then stopped. Duvall didn't smile. This wasn't a provocation, it was a verdict. To Duvall, Kubrick's method of driving actors through 70, 80, even 100 takes was not perfectionism. It was punishment wearing perfectionism as a mask. How can he tell the difference between the first take and the 70th? He asked. You don't find truth by grinding it out of someone. Hardened when Duvall watched the BBC documentary on The Shining. He saw Shelley Duvall forced to swing a baseball bat 127 times, while Kubrick watched with cold detachment. The footage disturbed him deeply. It confirmed everything he already suspected. When Kubrick once invited him to discuss a potential collaboration, a role in the Aryan Papers, the meeting left Duvall more certain than ever. For 30 minutes, Kubrick talked about lighting ratios and camera geometry. He never once mentioned character. He never once mentioned emotion. The air in that room, Duvall told a reporter afterward, was colder than a morgue. When critics called Kubrick a visionary, Duvall would listen, nod, then offer the same measured response. He was a genius, but a genius without a heart in Hollywood. That sentence cost him. He offered it anyway. Number 5, Robert De Niro. The Cold War between two methods. Robert Duvall never raised his voice, he said. Robert De Niro never issued a public challenge. The quiet hostility between them is one of Hollywood's longest-running Cold Wars, conducted entirely in restraint, subtext, and carefully chosen words. Du's most famous weapon was a single remark. With a perfect calm, he's very good at playing Italians. It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. That sentence was Duvall's entire philosophy compressed into 9 words. That De Niro, for all his transformations, the shaved head, the 60-pound weight gain, the method immersions, had built a career on performance of a person rather than being one. The work isn't tea in the weight gain, Duvall once told a journalist. In the silence, Hollywood celebrated De Niro's physical extremity. Duvall saw vanity. He told trusted colleagues that an actor who needed to become unrecognizable was, in some essential way, substituting spectacle for soul. When De Niro began appearing in broad comedies in the late 1990s, Duvall reportedly watched from a distance and said simply, "There's the mask cracking, De Niro," ever composed, one response to the press. Bob S., a serious actor, we just have different energies, clean, diplomatic, completely impenetrable. Privately, they avoided each other for decades. 2 men at the absolute peak of the same mountain, with enough mutual contempt that they never once shared the view. Some rivalries don't need drama. The distance says everything. 6. Bruce Beresford. The Oscar that left a scar. Robert Duvall won his only Academy Award working with Bruce Beresford, and he has never forgiven him for how it happened. Tender Mercies, 1983, a quiet, devastating film about a country singer rebuilding himself from the wreckage of alcoholism. It should have been pure collaboration. Instead, it became a battle of wills conducted in the blazing Texas heat. Beresford kept ordering retakes. insisting Duvall's rhythm was off. Duvall pushed back hard, arguing that a man trying to appear sober moves precisely like that, with that exact imprecision. The director disagreed. Neither man yielded, so Duvall made a decision. Before dawn one morning, he quietly assembled the cinematographer and a skeleton crew at the church location. No director, no approval, no announcement. He filmed the key interior scene, the emotional centerpiece of the entire picture, his way, in one uninterrupted take, in the gray stillness before anyone else arrived. That stolen take made the final cut. Critics called it the soul of the film. When Tender Mercies won its Oscars and Duvall took the stage, he bowed to the screenwriter. He thanked the crew by name. He looked out at the room and deliberately omitted the director's name entirely. The hall went silent. Everyone in it understood exactly what they were witnessing. The next morning, the Hollywood Reporter ran it as a headline. Ford told the Sydney Morning Herald, "I respect him, but we can never work together again." Duvall never apologized, he later said, quietly and without elaboration. Sometimes you have to choose loyalty to the character. He then went home, wrote The Apostle, directed it himself, and proved he never needed anyone managing his instincts again. Perfection is about doing it again. It's about doing it once, and knowing it is right. 6 names, 6 moments that most people never knew existed, buried beneath the applause and the awards and the legend of the calm, unshakable professional. What Robert Duvall's story actually reveals is something quieter and more unsettling, that in Hollywood, even the most disciplined men carry wounds that never fully close. Which name surprised you most? Was he right to stay silent all these years? Or should he have spoken sooner? If this kind of untold story hits different for you, hit like and subscribe. There are more names where Mercies came from, and the next one is even harder to believe.